Wow, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania was a really great movie, guys. I mean, I gotta tell you, this movie was something else, that's for sure. I think this is gonna surprise a lot of MCU fans. I think most fans are gonna enjoy this movie. Okay, I just had to wait for at least 15 seconds to pass so that I can actually say a swear word, and I can actually tell you what I really thought of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. This movie fucking sucked. Okay? Sweet Jesus. There were times that I was looking at the screen and I was just perplexed at how awful the movie was. You know, like scenes where I was just looking at the screen and was just like wondering, what the hell is this? What am I watching? You know, that's how bad this movie was. So before I get into all my problems with the movie, I will say that I was liking this movie for the first 10 minutes. I thought the first 10 minutes were actually fairly good. Well, actually, I'd say more than fairly good. I'd say that the movie was actually really good for the first 10 minutes. You know, I thought I was enjoying the movie. I thought a lot of the jokes were funny. I was liking the jokes, which surprised me. First 10 minutes, up until they go into the quantum realm. Because when they go into the quantum realm, that's when the movie kind of turned to shit for me. First of all, I want to talk about the scene where Scott and Cassie get captured by that group with the guy who can read minds and, you know, that warrior girl, whatever her name is, and that guy who's obsessed with holes. Yeah, that's real fucking funny, but I'll get to that later. First of all, I want to say that this movie's editing is just so weird sometimes. And, you know, when I first saw the movie, and I was, like, looking at people's reviews, you know, I heard no one mention this, you know, like, I thought I was the only one until quite recently, in fact today, before I filmed this, one of my favorite YouTubers mentioned in his review that he thought the editing was pretty bad. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not alone in thinking this. And I mostly noticed it myself during the scene where Scott and Cassie were captured by that group of people. Because the way it was cut together and the way it was paced was so odd, I felt. I mean, like, you have, like, Scott getting captured, like, it cuts to Scott getting captured, which comes out of nowhere, might I add, because you have, like, you know, Hope, Janet, and Hank traveling, you know, walking together through the quantum realm. This place is so weird, you know, whatever. And then you just cut to Scott being captured all of a sudden. It's so sudden. And then you have... it cuts to this weird shot of Cassie, and she's also captured, and they're trying to get Scott to drink this, like, red liquid that will make it so that he can actually understand everyone, because apparently that's what the liquid does. And it cuts to this, like, really quick shot of Cassie saying, "Dad, drink the liquid." And she's got, like, the liquid all around her lips, and it's just so weird. It's so sudden, and it's such quick, rapid editing. It's so weird. Then that leads into my next point, and that is the horrible comedy. I mean, like I said, the first 10 minutes, I thought the comedy was actually funny. Like, I was enjoying the movie. I thought it was funny. And then it's like, it feels like after they go into the quantum realm, all of a sudden the writers they had at the beginning just kind of left, and all of a sudden they bring in these new writers that are, like, just completely terrible with the comedy. That's honestly what it felt like. It's a huge contrast compared to what we got in the first 10 minutes. Like, it was so bizarre. I mean, like, you first of all, you have, you know, when Scott and Cassie get captured, you have these, like, really unfunny, immature-ass jokes where, you know, there's this, like, squid kind of, or whatever he is, kind of alien dude who's obsessed with holes. he's talking about, you know, how many holes do you have? You know, and then the guy who can read minds is like, you know, stop, you're obsessed with holes. And it's like they're trying to make this, like, really funny gag involving, you know, holes, because haha, that's really funny, because apparently this movie was written by 5-year-olds. Now let's talk about some of the characters in this movie and their performances. First of all, I have to say that I was not a fan of Cassie Lang in this movie. Like I said, I liked the first 10 minutes, and Cassie was actually fine in the first 10 minutes. Both character, you know, performance-wise, she was fine. But again, when they get into the quantum realm, all of a sudden, like, she just, her performance gets worse, and also her character is just kind of annoying. And then you have Michelle Pfeiffer, who, you know, as far as the performance goes, it's fine. You know, performance-wise, she's not bad. But her character, the character of Janet Van Dyne, was just unbearable in this movie. Like, for the first half of the movie, all she does is, like Hope and Hank are constantly asking her, you know, tell us more. Like, what are you so afraid of? You know, why are we, like, but Janet is like, the entire time, she's like, oh, I'm just trying to protect you. I can't explain right now. I'll explain later. I'm just trying to protect you. It's so fucking annoying. Hank Pym and Hope are asking these, like, common sense questions that anybody would ask, and Janet is just, like, completely ignoring them. You know, like, no, I'm trying to protect you, you know, you don't understand type of thing. Now, if you saw the trailers, you would know that Bill Murray is in this movie. But it turns out he's actually only in one scene, which surprised me. But also, in that one scene, you know, his performance is awful. Like, Bill Murray, you know, his performance in this movie is awful. I mean, like, all he does is basically be like, he has this, like, weird, like, his performance, the main problem with his performance is that it's just so cartoonish. And in the one scene that he's in, the entire time, he's just kind of blaming Janet, you know. He's talking to Hope and Hank and being like, do you know what Janet did? You know, she's responsible. You know, she's doomed us all. You know, he's just kind of complaining about what Janet did. And, yeah, he's just in one scene, but in that one scene, he's just awful. But even all of those characters that I just complained about, they aren't even nearly as bad as what I consider to be the worst character in this movie, and that is M.O.D.O.K. His entire character in this movie is just that he's the comic relief. He's the comedic relief, and he's just not funny. They think that he's just going to be this, like, gut-bustingly hilarious part of the movie, and that, you know, everyone's going to love him. But I felt that he's just extremely unfunny. The joke with him is that everybody thinks that he looks terrible. Darren Cross, who is the villain from the first Ant-Man movie, is revealed to be M.O.D.O.K. in this movie. And that's the joke. The entire joke with him is that, oh, what the hell happened to you, Darren? You look terrible. And, you know, you can see from the picture that I'm putting up, he looks fucking terrible. It's so distracting in every scene he's in. I just cannot even take the entire scene seriously because I'm just looking at this fucking terrible CGI fucking giant face nightmare, and it just completely takes away from the scene. And it seemed like I was the only person in the entire theater that was watching this movie. Like, I went to go see this in theaters, and there was a fairly big audience that I was seeing it with, and it seemed like I was the only one who couldn't stand M.O.D.O.K. I mean, everybody else was, like, laughing at him, and I don't know if it was, like, laughing at the fact that it's so bad, or if it's just, like, laughing with the movie, like it wants you to, but I don't know. I was the only one who was just, every time M.O.D.O.K. showed up, I was just fucking perplexed as to, like, what am I watching right now? I was the only one who was, like, completely turned off from the movie every time M.O.D.O.K. appeared. And that leads me into, you know, my next point. The CGI in this movie is terrible. You know, not just M.O.D.O.K. The special effects are terrible. I noticed especially when they first enter the quantum realm, when Cassie is like looking around and saying like, where are we? I could 100% tell. It was so obvious that they're just standing in this green screen nightmare. And it just did not look genuine to me. It's so bad. Now let's talk about another really big problem I have with this movie. And that is the main villain, Kang the Conqueror. Now, before you start getting angry at me, it's like, what the hell are you talking about? Kang was awesome in this movie. And you know what? Here's what I'll say. I love the setup for Kang in this movie. I thought that the setup for his character was brilliant. It was amazing. And Jonathan Majors' performance is fucking amazing. It's great. I didn't have a problem with Jonathan Majors in this movie. And the setup for Kang, I loved the setup. He is presented as this very ominous, like serious villain. Like, he's not just like a goofball like all the other fucking characters in this movie. He's presented in a cold, serious demeanor. And, you can tell that he means business. I especially love his line when he's talking to Scott and Cassie when they're in their cells, and he's saying, have I killed you before? I love that line. It's so ominous. It's so great. It's such a great setup. And also when he says they all blur together after a while. He's talking about the many Avengers he's killed in all the different universes, and it's so great. That line. The delivery, everything about that is great. But unfortunately, that leads me into my biggest problem with Kang in this movie. The payoff for Kang. I hated what they did with Kang at the end of this movie. Now I'm going to get into spoiler territory, so I'm going to put spoilers up. You get the drill. I felt that the payoff for Kang was awful. Especially after you get that awesome setup. Going into this movie, I was honestly expecting for there to be some sort of like dark ending. Like maybe one of the like Kang would kill off one of the major characters. I was honestly thinking that Hank Pym was gonna die just because he's been in the MCU for a long time and they need to show how much of a threat that Kang is. If he kills someone that Scott Lang cares for, like Hank Pym or, even Janet. I didn't think they were going to kill off Janet just because she was just introduced in the last movie, so I think they're still kind of like setting up more for her. But I thought that Kang was either going to kill off a major character or that Scott and Hope were both going to get trapped in the quantum realm at the end of the movie. I really wanted that to be the ending for the movie, but we didn't get anything like that. You get this final fight between Kang and Scott, and I'll admit, it's pretty brutal at times. The brutality that we see is only like tiny little snippets. And that's another thing I was going to say about the movie is that the movie is so tonally inconsistent. You'll have M.O.D.O.K, who's constantly spewing out jokes, and, other characters that are constantly spewing out jokes. But then you have Kang the Conqueror in this movie, who is this, really serious character, really serious villain. And it's so weird having him be next to M.O.D.O.K, another villain in this movie. And, any scene where you have M.O.D.O.K standing next to Kang, it's so ridiculous. It's a perfect representation of the tone in this movie, being tonally inconsistent. M.O.D.O.K is a fucking joke of a character, and then you have him standing next to Kang, who's a really great villain, he was set up as a great villain. But then you have the dumbass ending where he's defeated by Scott and Hope and is sucked into this thing, and he's killed. And I just thought it was ridiculous because throughout the movie, he's constantly saying that he's killed many Avengers, and when they have the scene where Scott's in the cell and Kang is talking to him and saying, "Have I killed you before?" and it's even implied in that scene. It's heavily implied that he's killed a variant of Thor, in one of the universes, Thor, arguably the strongest character in the MCU, was killed by this variant of Kang. I understand, like, I can already see it coming. People are going to defend Kang in this movie because, like, they're going to say that, well, that's just one variant of Kang. There's multiple different Kangs in multiple different universes, and that's what we see in the mid-credit scene. But what my point is, when you just look at this, even if you just look at this variant, this singular variant of Kang, not counting every single variant of Kang, even if you just look at this variant of Kang, he's mentioned that he's killed many Avengers. He's killed countless Avengers, apparently, but yet he's finally killed by this universe's Scott Lang and this universe's Hope. It's so ridiculous. To me, Kang the Conqueror doesn't seem like a threat in this movie. He doesn't seem as threatening as they were wanting him to be. And before you guys say, before you guys throw the mid and post-credit scenes in my face, those don't count. Okay? I'm talking about specifically Quantumania as a movie, ignoring the mid-credit scene and the post-credit scene. I know that the mid-credit scene kind of makes you think, well, wow, it kind of seems like Kang could go up against the Avengers with all of his variants. But if you just take Quantumania as a film, ignoring the post-credit scenes, he does not seem like a threat at all. Even when he subtly implies that he's killed a Thor variant, he still doesn't seem like that much of a threat. Like, we're supposed to see or feel that this Kang is supposed to be a threat to the Avengers when he's killed off by Scott and Hope. Like, it's incredibly stupid. And then you have the end of the film, like the ending after they get out of the quantum realm, which I have to say is the single worst ending. It's the worst ending out of any MCU movie. Like, it's not even a contest. Like, I was baffled by the ending. It is so stupid. So instead of any repercussions happening to any of the characters, every single character besides M.O.D.O.K makes it out alive. But it's like, who really gives a frick about M.O.D.O.K? I think a lot of people probably knew that he was a goner in this movie. They have him, like, kind of redeem himself going up against Kang at the end of the movie, but then he dies. And again, his death scene is treated as a joke. It's so fucking ridiculous. So the only character to die in this movie was M.O.D.O.K. Everybody else makes it out okay, and it's so stupid. You have all of these characters who are low-level, like, grounded type heroes who end up defeating Kang the Conqueror, who has apparently defeated Thor in one universe, who has apparently killed Thor in one universe. It makes no sense. And I even heard that the original ending for this movie that was planned was going to be what I thought was going to happen. Scott and Hope were apparently going to get trapped in the quantum realm. Meanwhile, Kang was going to escape the quantum realm and start, like, planning his takeover of going up against the Avengers. It was going to set up the Kang dynasty, and it was almost exactly what I thought was going to happen. I would have thought that would be a great ending, but no, we get nothing like that. Apparently, the reason why they didn't go with that ending was because they felt that it would be too similar to the second film's ending of having Scott being trapped in the quantum realm. It's like, what? Who cares if it's similar to the second film's ending? Like, that shouldn't matter. That is a great ending to have. But instead, we get this dumbass ending, which, again, I already said, it's the worst ending in the entire MCU. Scott and everyone happily return from the quantum realm, and, everything's all hunky-dory. And then you have these dumbass moments where, like, Scott stops for a second and thinks, well, what did I do? Like, Kang's variants might return. What if what he warned me comes true? What if we're all doomed? What if I doomed us all? And then it just goes back to like happy-go-lucky with the music and everything. It's so, again, this is what I'm talking about when I say that the movie is tonally inconsistent. You have scenes that are like entirely goofy, and then it will immediately cut to something serious, and then back to goofy again. That's the ending of the movie in a nutshell. It's tonally inconsistent. And even the very final scene of the movie had me looking at the screen in bewilderment. The final scene is Scott celebrating one of Cassie's birthdays because he missed a lot of her birthdays after being trapped in the quantum realm for 5 years. So he's trying to make up for missing Cassie's birthdays. And then he takes the final shot is so fucking bizarre. He takes a bite of the cake, and then you get this final shot of him like with a disgusted look on his face and saying like ugh, and then it just immediately cuts to the credits. What the fuck was that? I was looking at the screen like completely bewildered at what I just watched. What a bizarre ending, you know, with the totally inconsistent moments where he's thinking about, oh, I doomed us all. Oh, but it's probably fine. I'm gonna go down the street. Like, it's so weird. And then you have him being disgusted by eating a piece of the cake. What a terrible, terrible ending. So that is what I thought of Quantumania. I think it's garbage. There's a few good things in it. Again, I think the only things I liked about this movie were the first 10 minutes before they enter the quantum realm, Jonathan Majors' performance, and the setup for Kang. That's it. Everything else in the movie is awful. It's garbage. And congratulations, Marvel, you have now capped off the worst trilogy in the entire MCU. And I don't even think it's that much of a competition. I mean, let's look at the trilogies we have in the MCU. We have the Iron Man trilogy, we have the Steve Rogers Captain America trilogy, and we have the MCU Spider-Man trilogy. I mean, I think everyone agrees, it's not even a contest. The Iron Man and Captain America trilogy is far better than the Ant-Man trilogy, and I might not even be a big fan of the MCU Spider-Man trilogy, but I think it's more consistent in quality than the Ant-Man trilogy. And I've heard a lot of people giving this like 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, and saying that it's better than the majority of Phase 4. And I'm sorry, I have to majorly disagree with that. I wouldn't give this close to a 6 out of 10, and I wouldn't say that it's like better than the majority of Phase 4. I'm gonna give Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania a 3 out of 10. Now, do I think that this is the worst MCU movie? No, but it is definitely the worst Ant-Man movie. I've heard a lot of people say that the second movie is worse, but I disagree. I think that the third movie is far worse, and here's my reasoning. I'm going to tell you my reasoning why I think the third movie is worse. Back in 2018, when Ant-Man and the Wasp first came out, I was not expecting much from the movie. I really wasn't. I thought that it was going to be just an entertaining, another dumb MCU movie that you know, brings me entertainment. You know, just a movie that will entertain me for 2 hours. That's it. I wasn't expecting much. But with Quantumania, going into this film, based on the trailers and all the info that we got, and like Kang, trying to set up Kang as the next Thanos of the MCU, I was expecting so much more from Quantumania. I was wanting it to actually show us that Kang is a threat, but it didn't do that. Kang is defeated by fucking Ant-Man, one of the weakest heroes in the MCU. It's ridiculous. So, you know, it disappointed me more than the second film, and it didn't give me anything that I was hoping for. And honestly, I'm gonna say this. If it wasn't for the first 10 minutes and Jonathan Majors' performance, I would probably say that this movie is on par with Spider-Man Far From Home. And if you know me, you know that I hate Spider-Man Far From Home. I think it's the worst MCU movie. You know, if you want to know why, watch my Spider-Man ranking video and my MCU ranking video that I just made. You'll understand why, but, you know, if you take away the first 10 minutes of this movie and Jonathan Majors' performance, I think I would put it on par with Far From Home. So yeah, for me, Phase 5 is off to a terrible start. I'm looking forward to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is coming out next. You guys know, I love the first two Guardians films, so if that movie ends up being bad, I'm gonna be fucking pissed. So, I'm hoping that that's good. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good night.